Hi there, I'm Amy Boulware, and this is,
Irv Ginsburg, Papa Irv.
and we have decided that during this time of COVID-19 that we're going to take an opportunity to go down memory lane with Papa Irv. People love his stories, and we love his stories, and this has been something that I've been wanting to do for years. I'm a geriatric social worker, so I'm always thinking about ways to engage people who are older and wanting to give them purpose in life. He has purpose in life for sure. He's one of the busiest people I know, and he's going crazy during this time of social isolation. Or social distancing, as we should say. So we decided to start the Ask Papa stories. And that's what we're here to do today. This is our third segment. For those of you who don't know, Papa was born in 1936, and if you can't do your math quickly, he's 83 years old. And he is what I call a go-go. There are no-goes, slow-goes, and go-goes, and Papa's a go-go. And he's got a lot to share. So here we are today. We decided we're learning as we go, for those of you who have been watching. And we decided that we're going to pick themes each night and talk about our themed questions. So I'm going to ask him some questions, and we're going to go from there. So tonight, our first theme is dating and a fraternity in New York. So the first question is, Dad, can you tell us a little bit about your dating life when you were in high school?
It was very interesting. None of us had any cars because the insurance was so expensive, and none of our parents really had cars to give us or borrow or whatever. And so we had to make do. And if you were going out of your neighborhood, you had to figure out how you go on public transportation. How I met a girl in Brooklyn, I'm from the Bronx, and I met a girl from Brooklyn on Avenue J. Now, why I remember that, I mean, it's all
Do you
those
remember
years
her
ago.
name?
No, no, not at all. I'll have to think about it. I'll let you know in one of the later segments. But I would leave my house at 5:30 at night, get on a couple of different L's, subway, the L and then the subway, and go out to Brooklyn, and then come back. I'd get home, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we had maybe a 2-hour date. It was absolutely unreal.
What was an average date like?
Go to the movie,
And how much did movies cost?
14 cents.
Did you do popcorn and
Oh yeah,
chocolate?
God, the whole shooting match. Are you kidding? Nothing but the best. And looking back now, money was so different. Nothing cost very much money, but you didn't have much money, and so it
So
really
was 14 cents for 2 tickets or
no,
for
just for
ticket?
one, just for one.
Okay, so how did you get your money to take somebody out on a date?
Well, I had part-time jobs, doing all kinds of things, but I also delivered packages, orders for my dad, and people would tip me, and then I got an allowance too. I mean that didn't come in when you kids were little. We got that when we were small too.
How much was your allowance?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. A couple of bucks maybe for a
Oh,
week.
that sounds a lot.
Yeah, it
If
was.
a movie was 15 cents, 14 cents, that sounds
I
a
have
lot.
I have no idea, and I don't have anybody to check with. My folks are both gone, but
We thought you might enjoy seeing some pictures, so I'm gonna put this up. The Papa is right here. This is his mother, Mary Ginsburg, and his brother, Robert Ginsburg, that they called Robbie, which this might be a picture that my cousins in Florida may never have seen. So that's kind of cool. How old were you in that picture, Dad? Let's see, what does it say? You were at Mount Vernon, the home of George Washington.
no. Oh yeah, it was Mount Vernon that actually was at Mount Vernon in Washington D.C. I'm guessing I'm 12 or 13.
Look at you with your ties on and everything.
Oh yeah, well at that time wherever you went, if you went to someplace in D.C., you went in formal dress. And now I can't even figure out how to tie a tie. I have ties in my closet, but They're just there to hold the hangers up.
Okay, so let's talk about fraternity life. You were in
Pi Lambda Phi.
Pi Lambda Phi. Look, I found this in our stack of things, which is pretty cool. I don't know if you can read that or not, but it's kind of funny. This was from 1959, and Dad was actually the president, but it doesn't say president.
1959.
1959, what did I say?
69.
Oh, 1959. And Dad was the president, and it says Rex.
Except that the formal designation, I was the most noble Rex and potentate. And our objective was to have fun. And as I said earlier, even in college, we really nobody had a lot of money. And
you lived at home during college, right?
We went to CCNY, which at that time was predominantly Jewish. In fact, the campus was on the property of an old convent on Convent Avenue in Manhattan, and we used to call it CCNY Catholic College, now Yiddish.
That's funny. I haven't heard that before.
But we wanted to put together a social group, and there were a bunch of us that had actually grown up together and had gone through grade school and junior high school and high school. And so we found a national fraternity that was willing to take us on. And I would guess there were probably 25 of us. And we got together and we organized as the Pi Lam chapter at CCNY. And I believe we were the beta chapter. We reactivated a chapter that had been in existence years earlier. But again, we had no money, and now what were we going to do? Where would we meet? We found a loft in Greenwich Village, and it was a walk-up loft, and on the first floor, there was a law firm, Taplets, and Taplets. We never met them, but they weren't there when we were there in most of the evenings. And the place was, bare bones place. Okay, well, what the heck were we going to do? How were we going to get furniture? We had no money. Well, we went over to the Salvation Army, and the Salvation Army has a clearance unit. It's stuff that nobody wants. And we went in and bought all kinds of stuff, and it was junk that they really wanted to get rid of. And so they even agreed to deliver it for us up on the third floor of this loft building down in Greenwich Village. And I mean, it was quite a place. But I got to show you a picture that I drew of a sofa that we bought. Now, that doesn't look like much of a sofa, but just picture it. It was red and white, fur kind of material, and it had two drawers on either side. And even back then, it was the height of ugly. But it was comfortable, and everybody used to fight on who was going to sit in that sofa during our meetings. And our meetings were interesting, too. Money was always an issue. And we had a couple of accounting students who were in our fraternity, and they took care of our books. Well, Freddie Hands, who was one of my closest friends, we had grown up together, all he wanted to know was, what's the end total? He could care less about, the debits and the credits. What's the end total? How much money do we have in the bank? Well, we never had a whole hell of a lot in the bank, so it wasn't much of a worry. But we were able to pay the rent. Well,
how did you raise money?
Well, we would sell raffles a couple of times a year with prizes that we never bought. And never gave out. But the statute of limitations has run out. The statute of limitations has run out. And we would sell them to our family. So it was, but at that time, we all had part-time jobs. So I mean, the money was never enough. We didn't need very much.
How did you decide who could get in and who was?
Oh, there's a formal process. You have to be asked to pledge, and then you go through a pledge year, and then there's an initiation. And I can't tell you about the initiation because then I get shot.
Do you have a secret handshake and all
Oh,
that?
secret handshake and all kinds of.
Did you guys do any hazing or that stuff, or did that not happen back then?
No, we weren't together enough because this was a remote location. We were down on 12th Street, and the campus for most of the guys was up on 138th. So it really wasn't a convenient place to do hazing. But we did have an initiation, and it was a pretty interesting initiation. And I was the first president, and what we decided is that I would go through the initiation for the first class myself.
What?
And I decided, I had no idea what they were going to ask me to do, but there were a couple of what looked like could have been dangerous things. But I had never seen a member hobbling around, so I figured, well, there's got to be something to it, and I just went through it, and we talked about that for years. But the group was really we were very, very close. Most of us had gone through grade school, junior high school, and high school. Though some of the guys we picked up in high school.
Did you have a nickname?
Ginsey. And
how did you get the name Irwin?
I have absolutely no idea.
Most people don't know. He goes by Irv, but his real name is Irwin.
And I never asked my parents, and we didn't have another Irwin in the family. Now, my Yiddish name I got after my grandfather, my mother's dad. And there were actually 3 of us in the family.
Yitzhak?
Yeah, Yitzchak. And so and the way we were known is that there was, actually the short term, the nickname was Itzik. Itzik Mary's, Itzik Dave's, and Itzik Dora's. So we actually, it's like a southern name, Mary Sue. I was Itzik Mary's.
Okay, that's cool. All right, so there's a story that you actually told Amanda when she experienced a drunken night, which she hasn't had a lot, our daughter, but she did, and she was really afraid that Papa would know about it and be upset and disappointed in her. So he told her a story that I had never heard before, about a night of drinking with his fraternity brothers. So, and he's not, now he's not a big drinker. Neither is Amanda. None of us really are. So this was a really funny story. Tell us about your drunken debacle.
One of the things that the fraternity was known for is we had an open house. Most every week, an open house, which meant that you could come and drink. You brought your own drinks. We didn't supply any of the drinks. And if you wanted anything to eat, there was a bar down the street that used to sell French fries. And so that's where you would go. They'd go and get French fries. You couldn't afford anything else. But one night, we got to drinking, and I'm not quite sure what I was drinking, but I hear the story, from my friends, because apparently I was really totally kiboshed. So bad that I couldn't go home alone. And we had the ugliest drapes imaginable hanging up in the loft. Well, one of the guys took one of the panels of drapes down and wrapped me in the drapes.
What color were they?
Oh, it was flowers. It was the ugly.
Did they match the sofa?
Oh no! They were actually even wilder than the sofa. The sofa was bad, but these were, these were, I guess they could be described as safety drapes. If you bumped into them, you couldn't say you didn't see them. And we had them near the window, so we didn't want people, going out the window. But my friends wrapped me in this drape and took me home. Now, we lived in an apartment building, and they marched me up to my folks' apartment. I'm standing there, and I was sicker than a dog wrapped in this drape, and they rang the bell and ran away. And so my mother comes to the door and sees me standing there in the drape. Man, I never heard the end of that. She had me go into the shower right away. But I think that's what stopped me from really becoming an alcoholic, if that was ever possible.
Oh my gosh. Are there any other fraternity brother stories you think would be interesting?
Well, before a bunch of us graduated, we did throw a brunch for our parents, and it was the first time that they had ever been to the. I don't want to call it a fraternity house. It was a fraternity
Room?
Well, no, we actually had 3 or 4 rooms, but the fraternity factory facility. And I mean, it was something, I just wish we had pictures of it. I don't know how we got it. It probably is, a multi-million-dollar apartment now in Greenwich Village. There is a story. There was a strip joint.
What?
Down the street near that bar that I mentioned earlier. And there was they had a sign outside. It was a life-size copy of somebody, if I remember correctly, it was Stormy something or other, but not the Stormy Daniels, but 2 of the guys who were in our pledge class were given the responsibility for going to steal that sign.
Oh, jeez.
And we had that sign in the fraternity for a while.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's, we had a couple of questions about wanting to know how you met Mom and how you got your first date with her.
Okay, this is an interesting story. I finished undergraduate school at CCNY, and then I went to graduate school at the University of Illinois. And it was such a change for a bunch of us. There were 4 or 5 of us from CCNY, and at least there were 3 of us that had gone to undergraduate school together in the same department, so we knew each other. And it was probably the coldest winter in history down at the university, and the University of Illinois is on a flat plot of land, and when the wind blows, it drops the temperature about 15 degrees. And myself and my close friend Floyd Whalen were walking near the armory on the campus at U of I. And I said to Floyd, I said, God, how did we wind up here? This is the coldest I've ever been. And there was a girl walking in front of us, and she turned around and said, it's not that cold. It was that cold.
And the crazy thing is, my mother was the coldest person I ever knew. She hated being cold. She got cold in 85-degree weather. So the fact that she would even say that made no sense at all.
Okay, so we get down to the end of the street, and by that time we had struck up a conversation, and I got her phone number. I wrote it down, and I tried to call her. Call didn't work. I wrote the number down wrong. And really I had no idea, if I would ever run into her again.
I could be not here because of that mistake.
And it turns out that Nada was friendly with Judy Whalen, the girl who became Judy Whalen. Her name was Judy Wright at the time. And somehow a discussion was held at the place that Judy was living at, that and Nada used to hang around with her cousin, was a member of Indico. And that's how we got reconnected. And we dated for the rest of the time that I was in graduate school. And then I took a job in the Chicago area, and I used to come down for weekends, and we had been dating for a year and a half or so. Nada was 19, And
If you want to learn more about her, about how they got together and had their long-time marriage, 46 years before my mom, 48 years before my mom passed away, we will tell you more about that later because there were some obstacles. I'll give you a hint. My grandparents. We'll talk about that at our next Ask Papa. We're so glad you're watching. If you have questions for us, please share. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
Take care of yourself.